Today's video is brought to you by my fantastic patrons. Pledge today to not only have your name appear at the end of these videos, but also have your say on what video comes to my channel next. Link in the description. Time travel. The activity of moving from one point in time to another, whether it be the past, the present, or the future. A concept so outlandish yet so fascinating. An idea scientifically impossible, unless you're a writer for The Simpsons, yet seems so simple to do. While this complex yet easy to grasp concept remains hypothetical in real life, time travel has become an instantly recognisable feature of science fiction. Most prominently, films and TV series. Whether it be just a small part of the story or a driving force behind everything, time travel has snuck its way into multiple motion picture productions, each with or without rules to clarify if changing the past and the future is a good thing or a bad thing. And boy oh boy has there been some crazy shit done with this concept. Some time travel stories are magical and dazzling to witness. Some are confusing and hard to explain, where even after your 7th rewatch you still don't know how the fuck any of this shit works.
Is your head hurt yet?
Yes.
Some are tragic and emotional. Some are historical. Some are crazy and really weird. Some are horny. Some are uncomfortably horny. And some are just absolutely baffling. By that I mean terrible.
Talk to the hand.
But what if I told you there was a TV show that was all of the above? Because that's exactly what this show is. A 60-year-old ongoing sci-fi phenomenon that has brought entertainment to millions upon millions of people across the globe, and in the years following the turn of the millennium has become an iconic franchise that truly utilises time travel to its peak storytelling capabilities. Doctor Who. What more can be said about this legendary show? It's a national treasure here in the UK, and its iconic status has reached far across the seas. While nowadays its popularity isn't as big as it once was, there's no denying its impact on pop culture, other sci-fi related productions, memes, and other various places has more than given it a strong legacy. Everybody remembers the 1960s police box. Everyone remembers the Doctor, and everyone remembers that otherworldly theme tune. As of the time of making this video in 2023, this series is close to celebrating its 60th anniversary, with a 3-part special soon to air in November, written and led by the very man who brought Doctor Who out of a long cancellation period and back onto British television, Russell T Davies. I think now more than ever is the ideal time to break away from the norm of the usual Thomas and Friends content on my channel and to dive into another franchise that I am a fan of. And this time with a series that is hopefully more appealing to a general audience than Rocky, if you catch my drift. If this video does well enough, I could go on to review the rest of the New Who series. Who knows? For now though, grab a drink and a snack in your comfortable chair as we take a trip back in time. This is Doctor Who. Doctor Who was first broadcast in 1963 by the British Broadcasting Corporation, or the BBC, led by the combined efforts of producers Variety Lambert and Sidney Newman. The show focused around a mysterious man soon revealed to be an alien, called the Doctor, who would go on many dazzling and grand adventures in time and space with his spaceship/time machine, the TARDIS, standing for Time and Relative Dimension in Space, from which he had stolen from his eventually revealed home planet Gallifrey, inhabited by his people, the Time Lords, humanoid beings that watch over the flow of time but refuse to interfere with events. Except for the Doctor, of course. The TARDIS would disguise itself as a police phone box from the 1960s, but was much bigger on the inside. Throughout his travels across the stars as well as backwards and forwards in time, accompanied by his various companions from different time periods or even different planets, he would face off against many different forces of evil that posed either a threat to the planets he travelled to or the entire universe. Most famously, the Daleks, genetically engineered creatures of war, the Cybermen, soulless machines that were bent on that were bent.
He can't even keep a straight face at the word bent.
God. Hellbent, I should put hellbent. The Cybermen, soulless machines that were hell-bent on upgrading all life forms. And the Master, a malicious Time Lord who acted as a reoccurring rival to the Doctor. For the audience across England, it served as wonderful entertainment not just with its quirky sci-fi aesthetic, but by being charming, humorous and heartfelt, with some very emotional story beats.
One day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine.
But a key factor in what separated this show from many other sci-fi productions of its time, and even to this day, was its method of recasting the Doctor. The first incarnation of the Doctor was portrayed by William Hartnell, who played the character for 3 series from 1963 to 1966. Throughout his time on the show, his health deteriorated caused by undiagnosed arteriosclerosis, and so he would frequently forget his lines, requiring reshoots, which was much trickier in those days as they didn't have the resources for many takes of a single scene, and so a couple of his flubbed lines inevitably snuck their way into the finished episodes.
You're the cause of this disaster, and you both knocked both Susan and I unconscious.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
Wanting the show to live on but needing to recast William, script editor Jerry Davies suggested the idea of the Doctor dying and returning in a new body, given he was already established to be alien. The idea was put forward, and upon Hartnell's final serial story, The 10th Planet, the first Doctor, having stated to his companions to be
Wearing a bit thin.
What do you mean wearing a bit thin?
Oh, don't worry, child, don't worry.
collapses onto the floor of the TARDIS after escaping the Cybermen and regenerates into the now second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. The show had, by chance, found a way to recast its main lead in an inventive new way, and would allow the show to run well on past its years in the 60s and into the era of colour television. The 70s decade was the peak time for Doctor Who, first bursting onto colour television screens with the third Doctor John Pertwee and reaching national treasure status throughout the UK. I mean, when you manage to create an engaging era of Doctor Who with a shut-down TARDIS for the first 3 series, that's quite the accomplishment that should not go unacknowledged. His era showcased many staple characters to the franchise and iconic villains, including a wonderful 10th anniversary special that united all 3 Doctors at the time.
Oh, so you're my replacements. A dandy and a clown.
Then came the overwhelming success and now legendary era of the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker. Darker and more violent stories, deeper themes and grand historical pieces, all centred around a now untouchable icon of science fiction, played by a once unknown actor told he was nothing, now turned childhood hero to countless people, who still holds the record for the most series as the titular character. For the longest time, Doctor Who seemed unstoppable. And then the 80s happened, and within 9 years, everything just shit the bed. There was the fiasco with British campaigner Mary Whitehouse, who took issue with the show's violent and scary imagery, so future series had to feature less potentially scary stories. And then there were the changes implemented by the now infamous producer of the show, John Nathan Turner, limiting Tom Baker's creative influence over the show's direction with how the Doctor should be portrayed, leading to Tom's departure within the first series headed by Turner. The rather impossible task of having to recast the character with a considerably younger actor, the now 5th Doctor Peter Davison, limiting scriptwriters on the stories they could tell, the over a year-long hiatus between 6th Doctor Colin Baker's only 2 series, the latter having its episode amount drastically cut down, the rushed introduction of the 7th Doctor Sylvester McCoy as a result of Colin Baker leaving so swiftly, and finally having to continue the show on a much smaller budget than previously, before finally getting axed from UK television in 1989. There are several different details that I would love to go into regarding the decade that killed Doctor Who, which I simply just do not have the time for. I mean, you seen how long this video is? Fucking hell. YouTuber Cleverdick Films has a very in-depth review series for the classic era, which I highly recommend you watch. It's actually where I was able to find a lot of the production history for this review, so thanks Cleverdick Films. For now though, I'm going to focus on what happened between the show's cancellation and its revival. Following the show being axed and the BBC remaining very vague on whether or not it was coming back, Doctor Who content continued in the same way most franchises without new visual material did, comics and novels. The New Adventures of Doctor Who featured 61 books that told stories of the 7th Doctor covering the events after the show's then final series, complete with much deeper and adult themes than what could be told on television. Oh, and the abuse of sex, violence and swearing. Given that this was Sylvester McCoy's Doctor that they wrote for, I believe his incarnation would swear at any inconvenience.
Louise! Stay still! Will you stay still? You idiots! I don't know how many times I gotta tell you not to move! You moved! You moved! Thank you! Wonderful.
A Doctor Who movie was planned titled The Last of the Time Lords, but that never saw the light of day due to financial issues. The title itself would later become an episode in the show's revival era, but one thing at a time here. Then came the 30th anniversary special in 1993, Dimensions in Time. A special that featured different incarnations of the Doctor being chased by various villains from his past around the set of UK soap opera EastEnders. This was a terribly cheesy production which, despite its good intentions and positive outcome towards supporting children in need, was a less than stellar way to celebrate 30 years of the show's existence. And after its cancellation, I doubt many fans were happy to see their favourite show come back this way.
Our whole existence is being threatened by a renegade Time Lord known only as the Rani. She hates me. She even hates children.
Say goodbye, doctors. You're all going on a long journey. A very long journey.
In 1996, a TV movie was released as a co-production between BBC Worldwide and Universal Studios, to gain interest in a potential continuation of the series for both American and UK audiences, featuring the brief return of Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor before regenerating into the now 8th Doctor, Paul McGann. While the movie had its positives, such as the performance of McGann creating an instantly likeable new incarnation of the Doctor, elements of the film seemed too different and American, with inconsistencies regarding the Doctor's origins. On top of being broadcasted in America the same night as a cliffhanger for US sitcom Roseanne, which drew in much more of an audience than Doctor Who the movie could have ever hoped to reach, all future plans were scrapped and no series was commissioned. Which is a shame because from what I remember of the film, it wasn't flawless by any stretch of the word, but it definitely had promise. The TARDIS interior in particular for that movie, absolutely breathtaking. Though, despite the movie's less than stellar performance, it didn't stop the franchise altogether. We had The Curse of Fatal Death in 1999, a televised parody special written for a Red Nose Day charity telethon. A special which is remembered fondly by fans as a harmless little adventure that brings together a whole bunch of well-respected UK actors for something that pokes fun at the tropes of Doctor Who, but never tries to ruin the reputation.
Naturally, I anticipated your travelling back in time, so I travelled back in time to an even further point. And I bribed the architect first.
Why wasn't this the 30th anniversary celebration? On top of the newly established Big Finish Productions, a gathering of fans writing audio stories for Doctor Who, the spirit of the franchise continued to live on. Then came the turn of the millennium, and with it, something spectacular. Around this time, the BBC began broadcasting American shows like Star Trek The Next Generation and Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Britain. The UK audience was now eager for a new series with science fiction and kick-ass heroes taking on the many evils of the universe. The idea of bringing Doctor Who back was no longer a joke. Julie Gardiner, the head of drama at BBC Wales, was given the development producer role upon hearing the idea. She teamed up with producer Phil Collinson and a Welsh writer of the BBC's rival company ITV, Russell T Davies, who had had a previous history with the series, writing one of the New Adventures books back in the day. Davies was a huge Doctor Who fan and had a huge enthusiasm to bring the show back. The process was complex, but production was nevertheless underway, with Davies firmly established as the showrunner and head writer. A team of writers was established, each with their own connection to the franchise in the past, consisting of Mark Gatiss, who had also written for the New Adventures books, Robert Shearman, a writer for Doctor Who audio dramas for Big Finish, Paul Cornell, the writer of the 2003 fan web series Scream of the Shalka, and Stephen Moffat, the writer of the Red Nose Day parody The Curse of Fatal Death. I just find it so funny that a guy was able to show so much more respect for Doctor Who than the previous producers by, writing a parody that openly mocked the show for a lot of its cliches, that it earned him a place on the writing team and eventually let him take over as a showrunner of the revival. That's poetic, it's brilliant. After working with Davies in the 1999 TV series Queer as Folk, composer Murray Gold was brought on to create the soundtrack for Doctor Who's revival. Among the rest of the team was a whole bunch of directors, production designers, editors, costume designers, makeup departments, etc, etc. But who was going to play the main man himself? Christopher Eccleston, a Salford-born actor, had previously worked with Davies in 2004's The Second Coming, where his presence on the set allowed him to see Davies' writing skills firsthand. He believed Davies was a man who truly cared about his material. Having done so many serious adult drama roles in his career, he had an interest in playing a character in a show meant for all ages. He sent an email to Davies to be considered for the role, upon which the email was immediately cleared to the producer for Christopher Eccleston to play the now 9th Doctor. Former pop star and upcoming actress Billie Piper was chosen by Julie Gardiner as the Doctor's companion, Rose Tyler, an everyday girl from the then-present day of the early 2000s. The ideal POV character for the audience. Production began on the 18th of July 2004 and concluded on the 23rd of March 2005. Where, just 3 days later on the 26th of March 2005, after 16 years of being off-air since its cancellation, and the 9 years since the TV movie, Doctor Who aired on BBC television. The Doctor, the TARDIS, the whole show was well and truly back. Series 1 of Doctor Who is pretty fucking heavy, and this was necessary to demonstrate what the show was capable of on a dramatic and thought-provoking level. For so many years, both before and after the cancellation, It was common to see the show as nothing more than campy space adventures with silly monsters, once the show was forced to step away from its darker Tom Baker years. Thanks again for that, by the way, Mary Whitehouse. You sure saved Saturday night television there. The terrible cheese of dimensions in space probably didn't help its case either. For this series, however, we are treated to the complexities and emotions that come from travelling through time and space, and the human reactions they create. Nowhere else is that felt more prominently by going from the first series episode, Rose, to the second episode of the roster, The End of the World. As a pilot episode, Rose plays it relatively safe. It's the return of classic villains from the past, the plastic living creatures, the Autons, and the Nestine consciousness. Their plan to come back to life and invade Earth as its new home is more of a backdrop to us becoming more familiar with the typical adventures of the Doctor, focusing on Rose investigating who the Doctor is, after he saves her life from a gang of Autons cornering her at her job in the shops. Now her ex-job at the shops, which leads to her discovering the familiar spaceship and time machine that the Doctor travels in, and how people she knows can potentially be killed off with no time to grieve, after she and the Doctor believe Mickey is dead. In the end, the Autons are defeated thanks to Rose freeing the Doctor from their grasp, and having gone through the rush of adrenaline with saving the world from aliens, Rose dashes off into the TARDIS ready for more adventures. It's a very simple episode, as all pilots should be, but the audience is now on board with everything that comes from a basic Doctor Who plot. The titular character, his TARDIS, the threats he faces, and the banter between him and companions on his adventures.
If you are an alien, how come you sound like you're from the north?
Lots of planets have a north.
Then we move on to the next episode, The End of the World, and we are immediately thrown into a heavy-hitting story. The Doctor takes Rose all the way to the year 5 billion to witness the expansion of the Sun that destroys planet Earth. The threat they face in the episode is not the process of saving Earth from its destruction, but rather saving themselves and the lives of everyone on board the satellites from getting caught in the blast radius, after the shields begin to malfunction. Nothing can be done to stop the Earth from blowing up, all they can do is watch from afar. But in the time they spend trying to avoid being burnt to death, everyone misses the planet's destruction. So while the villain is dealt with, they lose their chance to say goodbye to the planet of the human race. There is a moment of quiet as Rose reflects on the significant event that they all missed.
We were too busy saving ourselves, no one saw it go. All those years, all that history, no one was even looking.
Before the Doctor takes her, and by extension us, the audience, back to the present day, with a whole new outlook on planet Earth. The knowledge that one day our home will eventually die out.
You think it'll last forever? People and cars and concrete, but it won't. One day it's all gone. Even the sky.
Writing an episode this heavy and airing it as the second ever episode of this revival was such a ballsy move on behalf of Davies. It delves very quickly into the hard-hitting downsides of time travel, that if you go too far, you'll see everything you once thought to be home that could live forever die in front of your very eyes. And so travelling back to the present day, you see every building, every street corner, everything and everyone as a ghost. Like, shit, that stuff is so deep. And this is just the beginning. Throughout the rest of the series, we are treated to all kinds of stories that tackle the emotional effects of time travel. Historical figure Charles Dickens, famous for otherworldly ghost tales, now having his whole worldview shattered when creatures from another world are right in front of him, and his saviours are that of a different place in time. Rose's boyfriend and mother going a whole year without seeing her after the Doctor makes a mistake taking her home. Rose's deceased father, who is momentarily saved by her, creating an almost world-ending event, causing him to go through the realization that his death is a fixed point in time and he must say goodbye to his family. A survivor during World War II, being very perplexed by two optimistic strangers that talk as if there is hope for their country as it's constantly bombed by Germany. These ideas are shown to us in a completely natural way, and in no way are they force-fed. Mostly. We as an audience are encouraged to ponder on what type of thoughts would be going through our heads in these events, only possible with time travel. Doubly so because these characters are written and portrayed so well, but I'll talk more about them later. The series isn't completely devoid of that classic era cheese. The whole overly campy alien space adventures are rooted in its core, so it wouldn't make sense to just ignore them for the revival, even if they don't always hit the mark. Episode 1, Rose, while a wonderful pilot episode making us familiar with all the essential characters we'll be spending time with over the series, as an episode in general, I'd argue it's not great. The way in which the wheelie bin captures Mickey and the scenes with his Auton duplicate are kind of cringy. The mere concept of shop window dummies coming to life doesn't feel that scary to me, and I find it hard to believe that they could cause this much destruction in a matter of minutes. In all the time we spend with Rose trying to figure out who the Doctor is, anytime we cut to the Autons and the Nestine consciousness, I'm left kinda bored. I'll give the episode this. As a fan who is slowly learning more about the classic era of the show, I do really like the links between this first episode of the 9th Doctor and other first episodes of previous Doctors.
Could have been worse.
Inflexible, you know. Could be useful on the planet Delphon where they communicate with their eyebrows.
I think the nose is a definite improvement.
A noble brow. Look at the ears.
As for the ears, well, I'm not too sure. Tell me, quite frankly, what do you say to the ears?
Such as the Autons themselves being the first alien threat faced by the 3rd Doctor, as well as the Doctor trying to distance himself from being investigated by Rose, similarly to how the 1st Doctor tried to keep his identity a secret when confronted by Ian and Barbara, in the very first episode of the show. And in a more meta reference to that episode in particular, when Rose meets Clive, who has documented photos of the Doctor's appearances throughout history, one photo he shows is of the 9th Doctor witnessing the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which was, of course, a significant event to Doctor Who's very first episode, as a news broadcast covering Kennedy's assassination partially resulted in that episode getting low views from UK audiences, almost getting the show cancelled before it even had the chance to begin. I can understand this probably doesn't mean anything to a casual audience, but from a meta perspective, it's like looking back on how Doctor Who almost never started, from a now new beginning that only exists because that same show lived on. It's brilliant. That aside, this episode is just kinda there to me and is very corny. But a necessary type of corny to feel familiar enough to Who stories of the past. Aliens of London, on the other hand, this is the episode that I look forward to the least whenever I revisit Series 1. I really don't like the Slovene or Raxacoricophalapatorians in this series. I'm sorry if they have their fans, and from what I remember, Doctor Who's spin-off series The Sarah Jane Adventures used them to greater effect, but I just can't stand them here. The build-up to their reveal coated in fart jokes really takes away from the menace that they're trying to give these aliens. Even if you're doing that to pander to younger audiences, it just feels...
Oh, there I go. I'm shaking my booty.
degrading. Their designs are cool, I guess, and the second part story, World War III, uses them slightly more effectively now that you are aware of their disguises, as does the epilogue episode Boomtown, focusing on a surviving member of the Slovene family where the fart jokes are almost nowhere to be found. Almost.
Sounds like we got here just in time.
But yeah, the Slovene two-parter, while another instance of necessary corny TV, feels a bit much to me. Speaking of two parts, it's worth noting the new episode lengths and their structure. The The classic series was famous for splitting their stories across multiple 25-minute parts, which could either be a 2-part story or a 4, 6, even 8 or 10-part story.
Bloody hell, the War Games. Chill out.
This was to accommodate how TV broadcasts worked in those times, but still allowed the show to tell greater narratives. By the early 2000s, TV had changed drastically, where single episodes could be much longer, and Doctor Who's revival had to accommodate for that change. Now we have 13 episodes up to 45 minutes each, which may seem to make that complete Series 1 half the length of your average classic season, but it is that 45 minutes that allows single episodes to tell lengthy, jam-packed stories in one fell swoop, without having to wait a whole week or so just to see the conclusion. And anytime they want to push that boundary, they can leave one episode on a cliffhanger and carry it onto next week's episode for maximum audience engagement. Like the aforementioned Slovene 2-parter, the episodes set in World War II, The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, and the series finale, Bad Wolf and The Parting of the Ways. Which, by the way, The Doctor Dances might have my favourite resolution to a cliffhanger I've ever seen in the show. The previous episode, The Empty Child, ends with the Doctor and co surrounded by sort of zombified humans in gas masks, all controlled by a child looking for his mummy. Yeah, bear with me on this. So if they touch them, they too will become like them, and as they are cornered, the episode ends and you're left waiting until the next episode to see if they escape. And they do so in The Doctor Dances, by the Doctor telling them to go to their room.
Go to your room. Go to your room.
Which, because it's controlled by that child, of course they listen. And how does the Doctor respond?
I'm really glad that worked. Those would have been terrible last words.
This moment sold me on the 9th Doctor, and is exactly the kind of cheesiness that I look for in a Doctor Who story. I love it.
However, the stories, while still self-contained, can still tell one big story across all episodes. I've yet to fully rewatch the other series, but I'm pretty confident in saying that what Series 1 succeeds in best of all, out of every other series since its revival, is world building and telling an overarching narrative. So much is set up and paid off in such a natural and satisfying way, perfect for both the average viewer and a long-time series fan. Let's start with the most prominent ongoing arc of Series 1, the aftermath of the last Great Time War. The end of a long war across time and space between the Doctor's species, the Time Lords, and the aforementioned Daleks. Not only is this an effective way of reintroducing the series' most iconic villains for the revival, but also very cleverly keeps the Time Lords themselves out of focus for the beginning of this revival. The Time Lords have had their fair share of appearances in the classic era, most prominently exiling the Doctor on Earth and forcing him to regenerate, crossing his time streams to meet himself in order to combat a new threat, sending the Doctor to the home planet of the Daleks in order to prevent their creation, summoning the Doctor to Gallifrey to uncover an assassin out to kill the Time Lord President, and putting the Doctor on trial. To say the Doctor has had a complicated history with his home planet would be the understatement of the century. So rather than having to info dump everything about Gallifrey and the Time Lords into one series, they very cleverly chose to write them as absent, as fallen victims of a supposed time war, making the Doctor the last of his kind, and every so often we would be given reminders of this. The Autons and Nestine Consciousness are hinted at having their home destroyed in the war.
It's not true. I should know. I was there. I fought in the war. It wasn't my fault. I saved your world. I couldn't save any of them.
And one of the aliens on board Platform 1 discovers what happened to the Time Lords, before it's finally revealed to us at the end of that episode.
My planet's gone. It's dead. It burned like the Earth.
What about your people?
I'm a Time Lord. I'm the last of the Time Lords.
Again, funny how the cancelled movie title found its way back. There's also the Gelth in The Unquiet Dead, whose physical forms were destroyed by the war. Before we finally come to the episode Dalek, where the Doctor is now face to face with the last of the genetically engineered war machines, and everything about how the Time War ended is told to us, with the Doctor at his angriest and most emotional, showing his true colours he's kept restrained all this time.
Your race is dead! You all burn, all of you. 10 million ships on fire. The entire Dalek race wiped out in 1 second.
You lie!
I watched it happen.
I made it happen!
You destroyed us!
The episode then goes to show the two becoming the opposite of each other, with the Dalek becoming capable of emotions after being infected with Rose's DNA in its attempt to repair itself, and the Doctor almost becoming a rage-fueled killer after witnessing the Dalek slaughter every soldier in its path and momentarily thinking it killed Rose. And while they do manage to defeat the Dalek in the end, it's only through the Dalek begging Rose to order its very own extermination. Very dark. Throughout the remainder of the series, the whole Last of the Time Lords thing is referenced once or twice to keep the audience's memory fresh, particularly in Father's Day, where the only people who could fix the paradox they've created are those deceased Time Lords.
There used to be laws stopping this kind of thing from happening. My people would have stopped this. But they're all gone. And now I'm going the same way.
Until we make it to the series finale, and to our shock and horror, there is a huge fleet of Dalek ships, with almost 500,000 of them in total, led by the Dalek Emperor, another survivor of the Time War, who created new Daleks out of the dead flesh of human contestants who lost Big Brother in space and The Weakest Link in space.
And no, I'm not going to give you context until you watch the show, because it's funnier that way.
The many mentions of the Time War were the perfect build-up to this grand final stand between the last of humanity on board of the satellite against the seemingly unstoppable power of the Daleks. We never see the actual Time War in like a flashback introduction to Gallifrey, because that would feel very rushed. But instead we are shown the horrors of a battle that could very much happen within that same war. Right down to the Doctor nearly using a device to destroy both species to save the universe, just like he said he did before. So we do see the Time War, just in a different way. An incredible payoff. The second ongoing narrative is The Mystery of Bad Wolf, starting with Gwyneth in The Unquiet Dead, whose clairvoyance abilities that allow her to communicate with the Gelth let her see into Rose's mind to see where she came from and potentially what might be in store for her future.
The things you see, the darkness, the big bad wolf.
We are then treated to mentions of it throughout the rest of the series, but not in the way the Time War is referenced. They are things only we as an audience are drawn to, that are not picked up on by any of the characters. At least, not yet. Such as the boy spraying Bad Wolf in graffiti on the TARDIS, which is just played off as a joke as the Doctor makes him clean it off.
Graffiti that again and I'll have you. Now, beat it.
The helicopter carrying Henry Van Statten, owner of the Alien Museum, that announces its arrival.
Attention all personnel. Bad Wolf 1 descending. Bad Wolf 1 descending.
The name of one of the TV channels in Satellite 5 in The Long Game.
And over on the Bad Wolf channel, the face of Bo has just announced he's pregnant.
The surviving Slovenes project for a nuclear power station designed to go wrong, and its name is Chosen at Random.
Fly through.
What's it mean?
Bad Wolf.
All building up to the episode of the same name, where the game station is run by the Bad Wolf Corporation. You think that the payoff was the corporation that the main cast ended up being unwillingly transported to, but it is instead a subversion. In the next episode, the Doctor sends Rose in the TARDIS back home in order to protect her from the threat of the Daleks. The TARDIS is under Emergency Programme 1, so Rose can't fly the ship back to save the Doctor. She believes she is stuck and can't do anything to help, until she notices the very same Bad Wolf phrase written in graffiti, giving her extra incentive to try and get the TARDIS to work. Through the support of Mickey and Jackie, she opens up the heart of the TARDIS, as revealed to us in Boomtown, and through weird timey-wimey shit, she looks into the time vortex and drives the TARDIS to the point where the Doctor is surrounded. With the time vortex running through her mind, she has become what she was always meant to be.
I am the Bad Wolf. I create myself.
She is now an otherworldly entity, capable of thwarting the Daleks and bringing back the dead. From the moment she stepped inside the TARDIS, her ultimate fate, who she would become, was already decided.
I take the words. I scatter them in time and space. A message to leave myself here.
A classic staple of time travel fiction, where a character is responsible for their own creation. However, while I feel the setup to this moment is fantastic, the only issue I have is its mention in Boomtown. When the Doctor notices the Welsh writing for Bad Wolf, he and Rose take a second to pause and think back on all the times they've heard it.
Everywhere we go, 2 words, following us. Bad Wolf.
How can they be following us?
Only to drop it, thinking it's nothing.
Nah, just a coincidence. Like hearing a word on the radio, then hearing it all day. Never mind.
Then in the following Bad Wolf episode, Rose questions it once more when hearing the name of the game station's cooperative owners, having a flashback to all the times she's heard it. I understand that this is to jog the audience's memories in case they forgot or missed an episode leading up to this, but I feel like this flashback would have hit much harder had they not questioned it out loud in Boomtown. I spoke with my sister about this, you know her, right? The one from that joke apology I made.
Hello!
And she believes that the original scene works just fine, as it gets people thinking about the mystery before watching the next episode that shares the same name. That without it, the reveal in the finale would feel too sudden and rushed. And I get what she means, but to me it feels a bit like hand-holding. It's like they don't trust the audience to have paid enough attention to what's going on, when every mention of Bad Wolf up to that point had been much more subtle. I believe if the Doctor had looked at the Blythe Droog sign and then paused for a couple seconds, you know, mysterious singing music and all that, it would have been a more subtle way to hint at Bad Wolf in that episode, only for Rose to have her flashback in the following episode and the oh shit realisation really hits the audience and gets them thinking where they're going to go with this plot point. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And I won't read them. Speaking of that final story, I really love how Rose's first adventure with the Doctor takes place on a space station, Platform 1 in the End of the World. Then in the longer game, it's another episode that takes place in a similar location, Satellite 5, around the midway point of the series, before concluding with the 2-part finale on that same Satellite 5 100 years after the last one. Their adventures throughout Series 1 end the same way they began, on a space station overseeing Earth. It's very satisfying, you know? There's also so many other setups and payoffs that I simply do not have the time to mention here, or else I'll be here forever. But trust me, they help to make Series 1 of Doctor Who a very satisfying watching experience. Nothing is ever left unaccounted for, and any unanswered questions are left intentionally in the dark to get audiences interested in a potential follow-up series, craving more stories with these wonderful characters. There is a reason you don't skip 9, because the 9th Doctor in Series 1 is, in his own words, fantastic. Right off the bat, he stands out from previous incarnations with his dress sense. Every other Doctor up to this point had always dressed in an eccentrically smart fashion. Big coats, colourful jackets, a smart suit to match, etc. But each with a quirky accessory, whether it be a long flowing scarf, an umbrella, or even a stick of celery. The Ninth Doctor sticks to a more traditional, smart casual dress sense. A black leather jacket, a simple shirt, black pants and boots. He blends into the crowd like he isn't trying to be seen, which is most likely his intention given his personality. He is still the same sassy and sharp-witted Time Lord he's known to be throughout the series, in which he has no shortage of quips and jabs at everyone's expense, not just the villains.
I saw nothing but an illusion.
If you're going to deny it, don't waste my time. Just shut up.
So what are you doing down there?
Ricky.
Mickey.
Ricky.
If I was to tell you what I was doing to the controls of my frankly magnificent time ship, would you even begin to understand?
I suppose not.
Well, shut it then.
Oh, well, now, yes, you see, the thing is, if I was you, if I was going to execute someone by backing him against the wall, between you and me, little word of advice, don't stand him against the lid.
I kept this stuff in case I needed to fight my way out one day.
What, you in a fight? I'd like to see that.
Could do.
What are you going to do? Throw your A-levels at him?
As a final resort, the excess poison can be exhaled through the lungs.
That's better.
But this time around, he seems notably different. He doesn't just try to hide away from who he is in the way the first Doctor did in his first episode, but in a way to hide the pain he won't tell us about. This is a post-war Doctor. A broken man who has seen the horrors that befell his people and almost has nowhere to call home. A scared and vulnerable soul. All hidden behind a dark colour scheme of clothing, a stern stare trying to hide back sadness, a slow but intimidating stride, and a rough tough northern accent.
Truly terrifying, isn't it? Oh fuck, my light died.
His whole demeanour says back off and leave me alone as he blends in with the everyday crowd. It's very similar to Rocky Balboa's outfit and character in the Rocky series, a dark colour scheme and scary looking guy, with the knowledge of how there is a gentle, damaged person behind it all. It's his adventures with Rose that take all the rage and revenge in his heart, and manifests it towards him becoming a better person. He allows himself to be vulnerable in moments where he really has no idea how to escape certain death. He has someone to celebrate with on his good days, to be happy when he saves everyone. Like in the Doctor Dances when he figures out the mystery behind the gas mask people and brings everyone back to life.
Everybody lives, Rose. Just this once! Everybody lives!
We gradually get to see more instances of him being gentler and friendly to the more innocent people caught in these alien events. God, that scene in Father's Day when he reassures the soon-to-be married couple, telling them how important they are and that he's going to save them, it's so sweet.
And I know we're not important.
Who said you're not important? I've travelled to all sorts of places, done things you couldn't even imagine, but you two. Street corner, 2 a.m, getting a taxi home. I've never had a life like that. Yes, I'll try and save you.
Then there's Dalek, where his anger is at its worst when he's face to face with the demon of his nightmares. He very nearly becomes like that same monster, but is stopped by Rose.
What's it doing?
It's the sunlight, that's all it wants.
But it can't.
It couldn't kill Van Staten, it couldn't kill me, it's changing. What about you, Doctor? What the hell are you changing into?
I couldn't. I wasn't.
It's his willingness to drop the gun against the Dalek that allows him to do the same in Bad Wolf. After witnessing what he believes to be Rose's death, now making this the second time he thinks he's lost her, we're left to think he's gone back to being full of hatred. As he and Captain Jack break out of the prison, he points a gun at the staff of Satellite 5, only for this to happen.
She can't reply.
Don't shoot! Oh, don't be so thick, like I was ever going to shoot.
A notable sign that he truly has changed for the better thanks to Rose, solidified when he's about to press the switch that will set off the Delta Wave, killing every Dalek nearby and every human on Earth below, in what is my favourite Ninth Doctor scene of all time.
I'll do it!
Then prove yourself, Doctor. What are you, coward or killer?
He wants to save humanity. He wants to save the universe. He wants to press that switch. But he can't. He won't become the very monster he is trying to destroy. He nearly did once, and he'll never do so again. Not this time.
Coward. Any day.
His two hearts have healed. The Doctor he was before the Time War has found his way back. Christopher Eccleston absolutely knocked it out of the park with his performance here. This is a guy who saw exactly what he needed to do for the role and delivered. A complex, humorous, charming, emotional incarnation of the Doctor. His final words before his regeneration after absorbing the Time Vortex energy to save Rose very literally describe his performance to me. Not only was Rose, and by extension us the audience, fantastic for being there every week for each episode, but so was he as the Doctor.
Before I go, I just want to tell you were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And you know what? So was I.
Rose Tyler is the audience stand-in, the POV character, the one we rely on to see the adventures of the Doctor through the identifiable eyes of a human, to react appropriately in the most outlandish situations that come from time and space travel, all with her own quirks to make her a layered character.
Okay, I'm just gonna build a wall just around here. Something that I think will protect me from the angry fans. So just bear with me on this. Alright, is that good? Alright. I kinda don't like Rose.
I'm going to try and explain this as reasonably as I can. Do I hate her? No. I love what she represents for the Doctor's character arc the same way he is part of hers. Taking her to see all sorts of places in time and space turns her from just an ordinary 2005 shop worker to a galactic hero and then basically a goddess of time and space. For about a couple minutes.
He's killing me.
I think you need a doctor.
Smooth. I also like how she shows an admittedly toxic side of the Doctor, keeping his distance from those closest to her and encouraging her to do the same if she wants to go on more adventures.
Don't. He's an alien. He's a thing.
He's not invited.
Well, if it's this much trouble, are you going to stay here now?
I don't know. Can't do that to her again, though.
Well, she's not coming with us.
She's cooking tea for us.
I don't do that.
She wants to get to know you.
Tough, I've got better things to do.
It's just tea.
Not to me, it isn't.
She's my mother.
Well, she's not mine.
That's not fair.
Well, you can stay there if you want.
It's interesting to see them bring the best and worst out of each other. It's an intentionally written flaw on both herself and the Doctor that I have no problem with narratively. What I do take issue with is when she is toxic in ways that are never really reprimanded. Sometimes she says and does things that just seem so out of pocket, like her conversation with Cassandra about being the last human in the year 5 billion.
I'd rather die.
honestly, it doesn't hurt.
I mean it. I would rather die. It's better to die than live like you, a bitchy trampoline.
Like, Jesus, what did Cass do to deserve that? Yeah, she turns out to be the villain later, but up until now she just seems to be a normal guest. As normal as you can be around sentient trees and repeated memes.
The appearance of the repeated meme. Shut up.
That's not to say other characters didn't have any out-of-pocket moments either, because they did.
See, they've known about aliens for years. They just kept us in the dark.
Mickey, you were born in the dark.
But still, Rose, mate, where the fuck did that come from? Then you get Aliens of London and World War III, where I feel like she is at her worst. It starts off with the shocking revelation that she's been gone for 12 months, and everyone close to her has gone through a very traumatic and emotional time. And while she seems sorry at first, she's laughing about it in the very next scene with the Doctor and how Jackie slapped him.
900 years of time and space, and I've never been slapped by someone's mother.
Your face.
It hurts.
It's so gay.
Yeah, the early 2000s.
This feels like it should be the main focus of a story, but after one scene in the beginning and a couple mentions here and there, it is scrapped and almost completely forgotten in favour of these farting, rotting pickles. Then in the end, when the Slovene have been defeated, she's just up and ready to go on more adventures.
It's all very normal. It's like any mother-daughter relationship. You know, when you're 19, as much as you love your mum and as much as you can be the best of friends at times, there's also this resentment there when they try and stop you from moving forward.
Billy, that's not resentment. That's flat out ignoring your mum who hasn't seen you for 12 months. Maybe it's intentional, maybe not, but it really feels cruel. Fast forward a couple of episodes to Boomtown and she's surprised to hear that Mickey is trying to move on from her because she's not around.
There we are then. It's got nothing to do with Trisha. This is all about me, isn't it?
You left me!
Like, duh! Of course he'd do that, Rose. Again, this might have been intentional, but it leaves me with so little sympathy for her as a character. Having noticed all these episodes came from the same writer, I should rephrase my previous statement. I don't like Rose when she's written by Russell T Davies. Other writers on the team, I believe, do a much better job in writing her as a flawed yet understandable character. I believe Rose's two best episodes in Series 1 are The Unquiet Dead by Mark Gatiss and Dalek by Robert Shearman. In The Unquiet Dead, it's her brief time bonding with Gwyneth that makes her the only sympathetic person in the room after her seance to connect to the Gelf causes her to pass out. Her outburst at the Doctor's plan to go along with the Gelf's plan to take the bodies of the dead is incredibly justified. He's caught up in his bias of the Gelf being destroyed in the Time War, and she's right to call him out on his disrespect of the dead.
You can't let him run around inside the dead people.
Why not? It's like recycling.
Seriously though, you can't.
Seriously though, I can.
That's just wrong. Those bodies were living people. We should respect them, even in death.
Which is believable she would say that, having previously lost her dad. In Dalek, she completely misses the Doctor's outburst towards the Dalek, being shown around the base by Adam. They see the Dalek in an innocent light when Simmons tortures the creature to get it to talk, and it's her naivety that causes her to walk right into the cage wanting to help. The Dalek, once it hears she's friends with the Doctor, puts on a facade, acting pathetic and scared for Rose's sympathy. She expresses it by holding its dome, which is exactly what it needed so it can absorb a time traveller's DNA and regenerate itself. So it's her fault the Dalek was restored, but unintentionally because of her manipulated innocence. Rose actually goes almost the entire episode without finding out that it was the Daleks who were at war with the Time Lords. And by the time she does find out, she's already made up her mind, as the Dalek has started to mutate and gain emotions. Her innocence becomes her strength as she stops the Doctor from killing the Dalek, which in turn stops him from becoming like the monster he is fighting. God, this episode is so good! Robert Shearman, you legend, you wrote a fantastic episode here. Father's Day by Paul Cornell deserves an honourable mention for how it handles Rose too. Yes, her rather selfish actions to save her dad nearly caused the end of the universe and the Reapers momentarily killing the Doctor, but her reactions are 100% justified. This is her first time seeing her dad, a parent she never truly remembers and only knows exists through photos. She doesn't think that she's above the laws of time like the Doctor first thinks that she is. She just really wants to see her dad. And throughout trying to figure out how to fix the paradox, has those wholesome moments she missed out on all her life. For the sake of all existence, however, she has to let him go, but not after she gets that closure she never had the chance to have. Hugging him before he runs to his assigned death, and sitting with him as he passes on so that he doesn't die alone. So bloody powerful.
So yeah, I do like Rose, just not when she's written by Davies. We good? Good.
Let's talk about the other major players of the series, starting with Mickey. He's a pretty fun, wacky sidekick type character. He starts off in the pilot appearing as goofy and kind of hopeless towards the terror of the Autons. But in the 12 months of Rose's disappearance and then her sudden reappearance later in Cardiff, not only does he go through a justifiable emotional breakdown, but he grows more as a capable companion. He's willing to defend Jackie Tyler from the Slitheen in his flat, even after she spread rumours of him being a suspect of Rose's disappearance. He carefully follows the Doctor's instructions to access the Royal Navy and successfully fires a missile to kill off the Slitheen. He then boldly goes with the gang to surround the remaining Slitheen in Cardiff, which, even though he messes up, his bravery to face them again should not go underappreciated, as he gradually gains the Doctor's respect. My favourite scene with him is at the end of World War III, where he and the Doctor talk over what's just happened, and having previously said he's not welcome to journey with them, the Doctor invites him to look after Rose and to make sure she's safe. But it's just too much for Mickey to cope with, so he declines the offer but still manages to keep his dignity intact.
Come with us. There's plenty of room.
No chance. He's liability. I'm not having him on board.
We'd be dead without him.
My decision is final.
That was really sweet. Then you've got Rose's mum, Jackie Tyler. I remember watching Series 1 fully for the first time a year or two ago, and originally I found Jackie to be annoying. Why is she getting in the way of all these exciting space adventures, I thought. Why is she putting the safety of her own daughter over the safety of everyone on Earth?
However, as time has gone on, and upon my recent rewatch of the series for this review, my mind has completely changed. Jackie Tyler is pretty iconic.
What, you find her on the internet? Just go online and pretend you're a doctor?
I am a doctor.
Prove it. Stitch this, mate.
Oh.
Mrs. Tyler.
Oh, it's him! It's the thing! It's the Slitheen! Only I don't know, he's an alien. For all I know, he eats grass and safety pins and things.
He'll have shepherd's pie.
I think what helps is that her reactions to what's going on with the Slitheen and worrying about Rose is well and truly justified. I mean, the last time she had contact with her was over the phone, having just been attacked by sentient plastic dummies. Then Rose goes missing for 12 months and just shows back up like nothing happened. And now suddenly aliens exist and are a threat to the planet, so when she rings the emergency number asking if anyone knows anything about aliens, it's not her selling the Doctor out, it's her worrying about the safety of her own child. Her arc finally comes to a close, however, when Rose is sent home in the finale and desperately wants to get back to the Doctor. Jackie discovers that the woman sat with Pete Tyler in his dying moments was Rose, because history was slightly rewritten, and deep down she realises the positive effect that travelling with the Doctor has on her. So does what she can in order to help start up the TARDIS.
Right, you've only got this until 6 o'clock, so get on with it.
Mum, where the hell did you get that from?
Rodrigo, he owes me a favour. Never mind why. But you were right about your dad, sweetheart. He was full of mad ideas, and it's exactly what he would have done.
A wonderful character in this series. Now for Captain Jack Harkness. Jack makes for a great secondary companion to join the TARDIS team towards the end of their adventures. It's like Adam Mitchell was a demo before they had another go at writing one.
By the way, I've nothing to say about Adam. He's there in Dalek, he's responsible for shit going wrong in the long game, and he's sent home with a nice hole in his head. That's it.
He's an ex-time agent from the 51st century, very eccentric and very flirtatious. Originally starting off as a con man, looking to do nothing than make a bargain off an ambulance ship he thinks nothing of, he becomes more of a caring person thanks to the Doctor and Rose and nearly sacrifices himself to save them from an oncoming bomb, in which they return the favour and welcome him on board the TARDIS, saving his life. He continues to be an optimistic force for good, travelling with them on the last of their adventures, but he still remembers to flirt wherever he goes.
Captain Jack Harkness, by the way.
I'm Davies Pavel.
Nice to meet you, Davies Pavel.
There's a time and a place.
Meeting the Doctor and Rose by happenstance was what pointed him in the right direction in life, giving him opportunities to be a selfless hero. Rather than run away from the Dalek ship, he faces his eventual death by the Daleks with no fear.
I kind of figured that.
And so his resurrection feels earned. I love this line he says before heading off to face the Daleks in what he knows is a doomed fight.
Wish I'd never met you, Doctor. I was much better off as a coward. See you in hell.
Another satisfying character arc. Pete Tyler, I feel, deserves a brief solo mention just for how well his actor Sean Dingwall plays him. As the Doctor Who Confidential documentary confirms, it's such a shock for Rose to go from seeing him as this grand, perfect dad with many plans and ideas to a bit of an incompetent, typical geezer. He's the Del Boy of Doctor Who, if you've ever seen Only Fools and Horses. A delusional dreamer who lets his lack of worrying about money get in the way of family moments, but nevertheless would do anything to protect them as they are what's most important to him. You've also got so many other supporting characters that I can only list now because this video was already going to be very long.
Christ on a bike, help me!
Clive the Conspiracy Man is good for his short appearance, didn't deserve to die. Jabe of the Forest of Cheam has a cool design and is great at allowing the Doctor to be vulnerable about the Time War. Charles Dickens is wonderfully portrayed. Gwyneth is a sweet yet tragic character. I'm so glad her actor got to come back for Torchwood. Harriet Jones, MP for Flydale North, is iconic. Nancy is such a powerful yet broken character whose happy ending is so sweet. The redemption of Blonfell Foch Slovene doesn't fully work, but the attempt was nice. And Alinda had great potential as a future companion. Shame she can't breathe in space.
All these make for great characters in an already amazing series. But what is Doctor Who without its fantastic villains, aliens, and dedicated production design? Well, I mean, without that, it'd be pretty shit.
There's just something so simple yet grand about the aliens of Doctor Who, their designs, and the design of the show in general. The right amount of cheesiness and innocence for kids, but enough boldness to wow the older audiences who may still see the mere idea of the show as a joke. The costume designs, the hand-built sets, and the CGI. The latter of those hasn't exactly aged the best over the years, and watching this on a HD TV really doesn't help either. But at no point does the CGI ever feel like they said, "That'll do," but instead said, "Let's go further." You can look at the Slovene emerging from the human skin suits, the Dalek elevating, the data spikes in the longer game, etc., and you'll definitely notice that perhaps they are a little bit too bold, but bold nonetheless. Sometimes you can't help but admire them when they really up the ante with what the effects can do. The Earth blowing up in the end of the world is the best example of that, which, according to behind the scenes, made that episode a very expensive one to make.
Speaking of which, nowhere else will show you the hard work that went into bringing the show to life more than Doctor Who Confidential.
This documentary ran alongside the show for 6 whole series. complete with interviews with the cast and crew, on-set filming, and discussions with the writers on why they go for certain creative decisions. Plus, interviews with previous Doctor actors to talk about their memories on production of the show during their era. The process would go an episode of the show airing on BBC One, and then an episode of Doctor Who Confidential airing right after it on BBC Three. Each part would even have a segment dedicated to the episode that the audience just watched. This scene where the Doctor travels through this ventilation shaft is filmed on a green screen floor, but instead of what I could have sworn was a CGI background for years, digital matte painter Alex Ford inserts a matte painting as the background. Very similar to what the original Star Wars films did with their backgrounds. That's so cool. Anyway, the aliens. We're already thrown into a huge cast of otherworldly creatures by the second episode, but most prominently, we're introduced to the face of Bo. A giant head in a giant container that, while not seen in the finale, continues to have reoccurring mentions throughout the series. Almost like they have plans for him in the future. What could this face of Bo potentially be significant for in a potential Series 2? Then you've got the aforementioned Slovene, who I've already established by now how I feel about. There's the solo appearance of the Reapers in Father's Day, who, despite them never appearing again in the show, the fact that we never learn about where specifically they come from other than they appear whenever a paradox happens, really adds to their terrifying nature. The ghostly beings of the Gelth, while they descend into generically evil, their manipulation of the Doctor's Time War grief is very clever. In the longer game, you have the mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hydrasic. You have the mighty Jagrafess of the Holy The mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hydrasic. The mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hydrasic Max, who feels like he's just kinda there for the one story as a catalyst for Simon Pegg's villain, the Editor. Despite that, his longer name is quite funny thanks to Russell's reportedly cheeky way of writing complex alien names for the actors to remember.
The mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hadrajasic Maxarodenfo.
I call him Max.
Then you get to the return of classic series villains like the Autons, who serve their purpose fine enough for a pilot episode, apart from this bit.
But you can trust me, sweetheart, babe.
Darling.
Sugar. Babe, sugar.
And then, of course, the Daleks.
Russell T Davies really wanted to bring back the Dalek mania as it was in the 1960s and 70s, which was a craze for the Daleks. To recapture the fear that made several children across the country hide behind their sofa. Job 1, give the Dalek a sleek, shiny new design. Still taking the shape and features of the original design, but now with a dark golden armour. One that I really think sells these Daleks specifically as the monsters ready for battle that they would have been in the Time War. I'm also pretty confident in saying that this is the only series of New Who that fully sells the internal fear of a huge fleet of Daleks without the audience feeling underwhelmed. Nearly, at least. We are first shown the incredible power and terror that could be caused by just one Dalek in the titular episode, as it easily kills its way through the personnel of Van Statten's museum like a hot knife through butter. All our heroes can do is run from this seemingly invincible demon. Cut to much later at the tail end of Bad Wolf, and we see not only are there more Daleks who are the ones in control of the game station, but the Doctor tells us that there's just over 500,000 of them. We were set up to see just how terrifying one Dalek is, and it paid off when we were caught completely off guard and suddenly confronted by an entire continent's worth of these little shits. A fear sold especially well by the music. Let's finally talk about the soundtrack, shall we? I love Murray Gold's music for Doctor Who. I don't know a ton about the music done for classic Doctor Who because I haven't watched enough, but its music towards the end of its run in the 80s was mostly composed with synthesizers and rarely ever any real instruments.
I could be wrong about that. Please educate me in the comments. Let me know how stupid I am.
It was great for the time, as synth was the way for music back then, but it does mean the music struggles to stand out unless it's the variations of the main theme. Now, in 2005, music in TV shows had drastically changed and, with the right budget, could be composed with an orchestra. Specifically, Doctor Who features music by the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, conducted and orchestrated by Ben Foster. With this, Doctor Who can now be on a much grander, almost cinematic scale. I just want to say this now, while I love his music in Series 1, there are one or two things about it that irk me. The first is that one piece of techno music that feels like it's played on a loop throughout Rose.
Hold on a minute, you can't just go swanning off.
Yes, I can. Here I am. This is me, swanning off. See ya. Oh. Fantastic.
And two, Gold really loves using the sound of a school bell, a reverse cymbal, whenever things get intense, to a point where it gets a bit repetitive.
It's impossible. So just take my word for it, okay? There's plenty more of those like cymbal sounds throughout Series 1, like so many. I just can't be arsed sitting through all of Series 1 again just to, find them. Just take my word for it, please.
But I get it. He was just getting the gist of how to compose music for Doctor Who. And boy, when gold strikes gold, man oh man does gold strike gold. That gothic, terrifying choir for the Daleks theme. The grounded, emotional song of humanity that is Rose's theme. The cheery, upbeat music whenever in a strange new alien world. And so many more. I know I'm just playing the music that he's done, but that just shows how well of a job he does. You can't put it to words. I want to dedicate time to talk about the use of the Doctor's theme, which I think plays a great part in the character arc that he himself goes through. When we first hear his theme in the first episode, we can barely hear this ethereal siren song. Signifying how he wants to go by unnoticed and keep away from Rose. Then when Rose travels with him to the end of the world, we hear this theme more clearly when he is all on his own and concentrating in what could be his final moments alive. Having now been on 2 near-death adventures with Rose, he opens up to her about his home being destroyed, where we hear his theme once more. When Rose changes the conversation to something more light-hearted, the music becomes more wholesome, but is overshadowed by Rose and the Doctor talking.
Right then, before you get me back in that box, chips it is and you can pay.
No money.
What sort of date are you? Come on then, tightwad, chips are on me.
So it doesn't directly tell us, but it hints towards the idea that he can fix his damaged soul, and Rose is the key to getting there. We then continue to hear his theme in various instances throughout the series. Most notably, his theme is nowhere to be heard in the episode Dalek, symbolising how far he strays from his moral compass and nearly becomes just like the Dalek. The last and final time we hear his theme in Series 1 is when Rose saves him from the Daleks in The Parting of the Ways, and he returns the favour by stopping the time vortex energy from destroying her. The ethereal singing is still present, but ends with a triumphant melody drowning out the singing. He has taken the first step into putting the past behind him. He'll always remember it. But now, thanks to Rose, he can find, in himself, hope. With all that being said, however, after all of the praise that I've given the Series 1 finale, not just with its music, there is one big problem that I have with The Parting of the Ways, and this issue breaks the story to me. Something that I like to call the Davies Ex Machina. What is a Davies Ex Machina, you might be asking? It is a very specific plot device very similar to the Deus Ex Machina, only this one is used solely for Doctor Who finales written by Davies. Which, I am claiming that phrase right now, because I'm certain nobody else has used it before, right? They haven't, I checked. A plot device by which the villain who has put our heroes, the Doctor and co, in a seemingly inescapable death situation, before something happens almost completely out of nowhere that erases the threat with seemingly little effort or consequences. And nowhere is that more prominent than in the Series 1 finale with how they defeat the Daleks. The Doctor is surrounded by the fleet of Daleks led by the Emperor. Everyone aboard the game station is dead, and they have begun their reign of terror on planet Earth below. The Doctor can't activate the Delta Wave as it would also mean killing all humans, very emotional stuff, and he is about to face his own extermination. Until... Oh wait, that's Sonic. Rose emerges from the TARDIS having inhaled a shit ton of time vortex.
Oh, that's good. Intervention!
And responds to the Daleks.
Exterminate!
With... by turning them to ash. They did set this up, in massive quotation marks there, in the episode before the two fart. I mean, it makes sense, because it was a Slitheen episode. Christ. In the episode before the two-parts finale, Boomtown, where Blonfell Fletcher's attempt to tear the TARDIS apart to destroy the Earth causes her to be shown the heart of the TARDIS. She looks deep into the light and regresses into an egg, showing the TARDIS does indeed have great power, but still, where in the who, what, where and how did this come from? I know Bad Wolf was a message in time leading the Doctor and Rose to this one moment, but how exactly does that translate to wiping out all of the Daleks? And I also get the point of showing how unstoppable these Daleks are by effortlessly mowing down all the humans, but where is that same feeling of threat when they are simply erased with the wave of a hand? Maybe to symbolise karma with how Bad Wolf's quick and easy killing of the Daleks mirrored their quick and easy killing of humans, but I don't know. It feels like they vanished way too quickly. I do have a theory as to how the Heart of the TARDIS works, in that I believe it fulfills the deepest desire of those who look into it, but at a price. So, Blonfell Thotch, deep down, wanted to start a new life after her time alone caused her to spare a human's life. So the TARDIS regressed her into an egg. So she has the chance to start again with a new family, but will lose the memories of her fallen brothers who died at 10 Downing Street. Rose, more than anything, wanted to save the Doctor from the Daleks, so the TARDIS granted her that very power, but at the cost of her own power nearly destroying her. before the Doctor absorbs the energy himself. His deepest desire in that moment was to save Rose, which he does, but at the cost of his then 9th regeneration. If that were the case, that would explain how quickly the Daleks are defeated, but then Rose still faces no repercussions. She passes out for a little bit, but then wakes up with no memory of what happened. Yeah, the Doctor saved her from her own power destroying her, hooray and all that, but where's her consequences? She looked into the time vortex, something that the Doctor says nobody is meant to do.
You looked into the time vortex, Rose. No one's meant to see that.
Yet she comes out completely unscathed. Why? This is something I feel can be explained with a behind-the-scenes story related to this series in particular. If it feels like this part of the ending was written just to set up the Doctor's regeneration, you'd be right, that's exactly what happened. Eccleston and Davies had a falling out during the making of Series 1, related to the chaos and confusion that came from creative decisions being made without some people's knowledge. In an interview panel with Eccleston at DragonCon in Atlanta 2021, he stated the following: "I left because my relationship with Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner and Phil Collinson completely broke down during the shooting of the first series. I think it's fair to say that a behemoth like Doctor Who, anybody will tell you it's probably true of all The Sopranos, it's probably true of all the big shows, that the first series, nobody knows what they are doing. So the shooting of the first series was a nightmare, and I was right at the centre of it. I was probably more experienced even than Russell, and probably been on more television and film sets than anybody, and I could see what was going on. I reported it back and just got silenced and got a lot of, well, we didn't know this was happening. And I was like, well, it's your job to know what's happening. So the relationship of trust broke down. So off I went. With that knowledge in mind, you can really feel that the Series 1 finale is sort of rushed towards the end of the story. Especially compared to later Doctor Who finales where the regenerations have more of a lengthy build-up. Not to say that previous Doctor regenerations never happened without any build-up, at least as far as I can tell, but to have the Doctor regenerate so soon in not just the first of a new series in 16 years, but also some audiences' first introduction to the Doctor is, regardless of behind-the-scenes drama, very jarring. And so the defeat of the Daleks feels like an ass pull. While an impossible scenario, had the Ninth Doctor stuck around for a second series, I feel like you could rewrite the ending so that there are consequences that Rose faces for looking directly into the TARDIS. And believe it or not, there's a lost ending to Series 1 that shows us an example of what could have happened. Tom Bowen did a great video looking into this never-seen ending, which I highly recommend you watch, but I'll summarise in short what happened. Davies agreed with Eccleston to keep his departure from Doctor Who a secret until after The Parting of the Ways had aired in June of 2005. In order to avoid any press from finding out, a fake ending was shot in secret to be shown at test screenings before the episode's air date. The only issue was that a week after episode 1 Rose aired, the BBC announced out of the blue that Christopher Eccleston would be leaving Doctor Who, giving away that the Doctor would regenerate at the end of this series, and then later confirming David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. A trend that would unfortunately run into later series of Doctor Who because the BBC just can't keep a bloody secret. Anyways, what exactly was shown in this deleted ending? The ending picks up right after the Daleks are defeated, as the Doctor takes unconscious Rose with him into the TARDIS and disappears, leaving Captain Jack alone on the game station after Rose previously resurrected him with her Bad Wolf powers. The TARDIS scans Rose's body as the Doctor smiles affectionately at her, before his attention is drawn to the TARDIS with an alert saying "Life form dying," and the episode ends. While obviously not much, as it was never intended to be aired on TV, and would also never see the light of day after the whole news leak, at least this ending gives some consequences towards Rose having looked into the TARDIS. It makes me think about how that could play into the later Christmas special of that year. Maybe the story could have been the Doctor looking for a way to save Rose while also dealing with a new alien threat. where he shows how much he has grown from his Series 1 character arc by sparing his enemy's life, and his narrative reward is restoring Rose back to full health. They return to Jackie and Mickey on Christmas Day and spend the holiday together, before pondering where their next adventures will be in Series 2. It'd still have issues and would also never happen because the decision was final on Eccleston's departure, but I feel like it would better suit this rather rushed defeat of the Daleks in an otherwise wonderful finale to Series 1. Just a way to imagine what if. Before we conclude, I'd like to very briefly rank all 13 episodes of Series 1 from worst to best. Number 13 is Aliens of London, a rather childish episode to sit through with the farting Slovene, and the more interesting plot point of Rose being gone for 12 months feels swept under the rug. Number 12 is Rose, a harmless pilot that certainly has a nice energy to it, but the rather underwhelming autons and somewhat repetitive music hold it back in a big way. Number 11 is The Long Game. The concept of a satellite society that doesn't ask questions is interesting, but never really goes anywhere, with boring Adam taking up the focus. This episode I put above the others for Simon Pegg as the editor alone. Number 10 is World War III. It has the same problems as Aliens of London, but at least the Slovenes start to feel slightly more of a threat this time. Also, again, Harriet Jones' MP for Flydale North is iconic. Number 9 is Boomtown, my favourite of these Slovene stories, with the great dynamic of the TARDIS quartet shining through greatly. While Blonfelfot doesn't feel completely redeemed at the end, the uncomfortable idea of taking an alien to their execution really leaves you thinking. Number 8 is The End of the World. While Rose kinda gets on my nerves, that doesn't stop this from being one of the most ambitious and heavy-hitting episodes of the series. This is the true pilot of Doctor Who in my eyes. Number 7 is The Empty Child. The unfamiliarity of this dark and disturbing threat in a damp and depressing World War II era makes this a great episode, forever making its way into the nightmares of children watching it for the first time with one question.
Are you my mummy?
Number 6 is The Doctor Dances. It takes the stakes of the previous episode up a notch with the never-ending suspense to escape a terrifying threat. The back and forth banter between the trio is humorous but never becomes annoying. Everybody Lives is such a wholesome end to this story. Number 5 is Bad Wolf. I do kinda love the cheesiness of how the game station uses now outdated game shows, yet still feels like a genuine threat once we uncover the masterminds behind it. No, not actual mastermind, although I would totally watch it being presented by a Dalek. Number 4 is The Unquiet Dead. Such a quaint period piece showing the true capabilities of Doctor Who for adventures in the past. The portrayal of Charles Dickens feels like a real three-dimensional character that you genuinely care for at the end of the story. Wonderful stuff. Number 3 is The Parting of the Ways, a truly climactic ending to Series 1 where the morals and integrity of each and every character is pushed to the brink. The conclusion to the Doctor's character arc is so powerful and sets the stage for his next adventures in Series 2. Number 2 is Father's Day, one of the best stories in Doctor Who that tackles the true consequences and emotional damage of time travel. Terrifying villains, the Doctor and Rose's dynamic is truly tested for the first time, and further develops Rose as not just an audience POV character, but a layered one. And number 1, to nobody's surprise, is Dalek. The one episode that I immediately think of when it comes to Series 1 and what it did best. Eccleston acts his heart and soul out, and we truly see the nightmare that is just one Dalek, while also exploring a new idea of the torment that comes from it mutating and gaining emotions. Absolutely the best of the series. Series 1 was the ideal series to bring Doctor Who back after years and years of it being off air. reinventing all that was previously thought possible with the series, but never tries to distance itself from what made the classic era so beloved. This is a series that had to do well. It needed to show that Doctor Who had sticking power. Without this series doing so well, we wouldn't have anything. No second series, no later series after that one, no 50th anniversary special, no 60th anniversary special. And the fandom that continues to show their love for this series to this day would be nowhere near as big as it is nowadays had Series 1 been a dud. It has its problems, which do hold it back from being a perfect comeback, and later series would seek to fix those issues, but that's completely normal. Yet even 18 years later, this is a series that has stood the test of time and hardly shows its age.
It hurts! It's so gay.
Apart from that, the stories are grounded with heavy and complex themes, yet take place in the most out-of-this-world scenarios. The characters are relatable and feel genuine as we get to know them and watch them grow as people over the course of the series. There is an ambition behind the special effects, the sound design, the music, the tone, the world building, all of that. The phrase "don't skip 9" exists for a reason. So, in the midst of the hype for the soon-to-be-released 60th anniversary specials and the new series with a new Doctor in the form of Ncuti Gatwa, I strongly recommend you take some time to watch Series 1, either as a fan who has watched it many times before, or a newbie who has never seen it before, whether by yourself or with friends and family, as you laugh, cry, shiver in fear, cringe in embarrassment, stare in amazement, smile with a wholesome feeling in your heart, cheer with excitement, and simply just sit back and enjoy the very series that brought Doctor Who back. There really is no other word to describe Series 1 other than just fantastic. If the Jagrafess had to be inserted into Satellite 5, does that mean he had wires running into his anus?